The majority of the largest and the best loyalty providers are SaaS providers right now. Where Salesforce is really betting big on is with their launch of Agentforce that they announced at Dreamforce. We're still migrating so much older, custom, we want to build this in-house technology to this beautiful, lean SaaS technology that will give you all of this. That will allow you to focus on your business.
On today's episode, we welcome AT, who is the Digital Transformation Practice Lead at Deloitte Digital, specializing in the retail consumer goods sector. Now, Adrian has over 15 years of experience in digital transformation, customer loyalty, and technology innovation. Previously, he has held leadership roles at Dentsu International as VP and head of global Salesforce programs and at Kobe Marketing as director of loyalty consulting. Now, I'm excited to have AT joining us here today. And in this episode, we're going to deconstruct the driving forces shaping loyalty programs today, the role of personalization and how this is being shaped by tech and changing generational cohorts. And lastly, the emerging role of AI in loyalty and the changing expectations that brands will have in 2025 for this technology. Adrian, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here, brother. Thank you so much, Z.
In your experience, what would you say are some of the biggest pitfalls that brands encounter with their loyalty programs today?
Yeah, great question. So I like thinking about building a loyalty program in the way that people used to think about building an app, where if many people thought as long as I have an app, I'm doing what the competition is doing, but to have an impactful, good, strong app is actually very hard to do. And it's actually really hard to do with a loyalty program, but three super important things. One, it has to be rooted in what's unique to your brand. It can't be a replication of what everyone else is doing. It's what's special to your brand. What kind of services or products or messaging or capabilities do you have? Number two, it has to be rooted in financials. It has to make financial sense. There has to be a great value exchange between the consumer and the business. And last, it is not something you launch and do. It is absolutely living and evolving. It needs to change. It needs to improve. The benefits have to shift over time. Those are three critical things that people have to do.
You've been doing this for quite some time and you've worked with very respectable brands. I imagine there's been programs that you've developed, architected, and deployed that you're really proud of. Is there one that has stood the test of time in your opinion? And if you can't reveal who the brand is and what they did, can you sort of give us the skeleton of why that loyalty program was successful?
Yeah, so I love it. So if I look at, I probably launched and supported over 30 different programs in my career. And if I look at what are some of the brands that are doing things that are fun and relevant, what are those things? I think one, it's when you're the CEO of the company is, if it's a public company and it's talking about their quarterly results, if they're talking about loyalty in their shareholder meetings, they're probably really focusing on loyalty and doing something right. So a lot of those programs did that. Another thing that I love when programs do is a real-time engagement and communication. So if you just reached a specific tier, you did something that's specific, can I get you the text message right now? So one specific example, I worked with AMC Theaters years ago. And if you bought your ticket and you went to get your stub ripped, if you bought a ticket that earned you a reward, $10 you could redeem, we would send that message in a second. So before your ticket was even ripped, we would let you know that you can redeem for free food or free popcorn. So that kind of real-time engagement. But I think my favorite brands overall that we work with are the ones that just are, they understand their brand, they embody their brand within loyalty. And you see that in their benefits and their communications, and how they go to market. That's what really gets me excited.
We reap the benefits of real-time communications from these brands, and it probably changes depending on what the context is. So, for example, if we're talking about travel, the importance of real-time communication, very high. But every real-time communication doesn't necessarily fit that mold of loyalty. Could you give us an articulation of how you define loyalty? Is it just, real-time personalized communications, or is there a certain tenet or criteria that it also has to meet in your book?
To be a loyalty program?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think first there's different flavors of what we see in loyalty. So there's membership programs that are becoming much more popular that I think are in the family of loyalty. But I would say holistically, we call it little loyalty or big loyalty. I think loyalty that's significant in market that's going to have an impact is a very specific value exchange between the consumer and the business that you can track and monitor. So it doesn't always have to be dollar spent, but many times it is. But it has a very specific structure. So most often than not, there will be an earn structure, there'll be a redemption structure, there'll be some level of benefits. There could be tiering, but I think that's when we really start to get into the foundation of a loyalty program. Now, you also have very big loyalty, which is just as big of a word as personalization or even like AI. It means a lot of different things. So loyalty means how loyal am I to the brand? Am I willing to spend more because I want this? Will I never shop with a competitor for this reason? Will I go out of my way to stay at this brand? That I think loyalty programs really impact. And I think where I really saw this come to life throughout my career that's so impactful is hotel brands that have loyalty programs, or even airline brands. People will pick a layover when you're flying because of your loyalty to that airline, or you'll drive 15 miles out of the way to stay at that hotel. Early on in my career, when I saw humans behaving that way out of inconvenience for the loyalty of the brand, that's when I really started falling in love with loyalty.
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And my pushback isn't that loyalty is something that's powerful and effective. Otherwise, it wouldn't have developed into the practice that it is. But my question is more, how do you distinguish the power of the brand versus the power of the loyalty program? For example, I travel a lot. In the last 2 years, I've probably been on 30 or 40 flights. And if I'm traveling domestically within the US, I tend to prioritize Delta because I've just had such great, powerful experiences with Delta versus other brands. Now, I do participate in their medallion program, which is, a loyalty program. However, when I'm searching for flights, I don't necessarily think I'm searching for the benefits of the program. I don't think that's the main reason why I say, hey, I'm going with Delta. The main reason why I'm going with Delta is typically because I've just had very positive experiences on their flights. So how do you sort of discern the role that those two play, and do you need a powerful brand to have a powerful loyalty program?
Yeah, so when we do our research on loyalty and overall consumer shopping, right, we do a ton of behavior analysis, insights on where we put our spend, voting with our wallet, all that good stuff. There's top 3 things that you care about. The first thing you care about is that you're getting good value. You never want to feel like you're getting ripped off on something. It doesn't matter how good the service is, you want to feel like you're getting good value. The second thing, and these go back and forth, is the service. So how good were the shoes I bought? How good was the flight? Third comes up is loyalty program with the brand. So loyalty programs are exceedingly powerful in the where we spend and how we shop. What you're alluding to in the airline business is that if you're flying internationally, you might not spend $3,000 more to go to that airline. Now, some people might, but Z specifically might not. But what I would bet, ZARYN, is if you're looking at a flight from New York to Florida, and you see two airlines that have both very good reputations, but you belong to the Delta program, you will pick Delta over the other brand. So something happened along the way. Could have been that experience. You know the name of the loyalty program, so there's obviously something that resonated with you. So if that shift in spend happens 5, 10, and maybe for some people even 70% of the time, that is still equating to billions of dollars of additional revenue that they're driving through that. So you're absolutely right. How much money you spend matters. The service is so important. But loyalty, when it's done right, can shift portions of that spend to be super impactful and have a big upside for the business.
You've been doing this for quite some time, and you've been at a few different places within your career in loyalty. And I'm interested to know your perspective. If we were to go in a time machine right now, go 5 years or maybe 7 years in the past, and you ran into a group of CMOs that were managing very, best in class global loyalty programs, spending a ton of money, hundreds of millions of records, what would be the biggest distinctions between the tenants and their approach to loyalty then versus today?
Yeah, wonderful question. So I would say foundationally, the technology has changed so much. So while SaaS was starting to become popular, SaaS wasn't everywhere. The majority of the largest and the best loyalty providers are SaaS providers right now. So it's cloud-based. It's no longer on-prem. So I think if I was talking to those CMOs or CIOs, I would kind of share the emphasis of the importance of that shift and what it means to move away from building things custom, right? Because we're still migrating so much older custom. We want to build this in-house technology to this beautiful, lean SaaS technology that will give you all of this. So allow you to focus on your business and allow you to purchase out of the box these wonderful capabilities. So that would be one. And I would say two, it's just the emphasis of and the importance of the data collection and this zero-party data, asking the questions, building that in the unified profile, and then decisioning on it. I think it's always been important, but now with these beautiful, advanced machine learning models and the ability to drive personalization, all of that is really rooted on having the data and the profile and the information to really drive that forward. I think those two shifts really stand out to me, Z.
One of the things that I know you were recently at a big Salesforce conference, and you hosted a very curated conversation speaking about the future of loyalty. And one stat in particular that I was curious to learn more about is around Gen Z, because one of the big facets of loyalty from what I'm learning with you is that the exchange for personalized information is critical to make this work. People need to have an incentive to share their information with retailers and brands in order to enable these systems to work. Now, if we look at millennials 25 to 40, 73% are willing to share information for personalized experiences. If we shift down a notch to the Gen Z generation, which 18 to 24, 69% are willing to share information. So it's still overwhelmingly a lot, but they seem to be a little bit more concerned about sharing their data. And this is important because although Gen Z only contributes 5% of spending in the US currently, that number is projected to grow to 17% in the next couple of years by 2030. So how are brands within their loyalty programs thinking about Gen Z? And particularly, how are they developing programs to capture that audience and that growing purchasing power?
Yeah, so when we look at disposable spend, Gen Z and millennials actually have about a third of all spend. So while Gen Z is a smaller, it's certainly growing and getting bigger. So they certainly are going to be a critical spender. That's only going to continue to grow. Now, they're a very interesting and beautifully dynamic group of people. So there's about 70 million Gen Zs in the US. I'm always struck by this. More than half of them will follow and purchase from influencers. So as you can imagine, the way they're engaging is new and it's interesting, and they've been on social media forever, right? Their whole entire existence. It's critical. But what's fascinating with them is, they have concerns. They have concerns on their financial future. They worry about AI, automation, and eliminating jobs and what that means for them. They really care about climate change. And a lot of the data shows that they're actually willing to pay more money for sustainable products to alleviate those risks that they see. But they also have this really beautiful internal power where they believe they have the ability to change and impact organizations. They have huge expectations for brands that they're responsible. They believe that engaging with brands is a two-way conversation and the brand should listen. And like I just said earlier, they're willing to vote with their wallet. So since they're spending so much of their money through the engagement of social media, but they really care about what the brand represents, it's putting a big challenge on brands to listen and engage and not overstep, but also be good stewards of humanity. So it's definitely a shifting dynamic that brands have to listen to and continue to shift with.
Yeah, and I think we've seen so many examples already where brands lean into things that don't fit the brand, aren't really the values or the mission of the business, and they get shamed and called out for it on social media. So that's very true.
Especially in this political season now, you see some brands stepping away from it. Some brands really lean into it, but they might be super left and super right, and some of it isn't good for them. Some is good for them. So it's this mixture of things that they have to work through.
Yeah. I see that as a pendulum swinging. I think that Gen Z wants brands to carry their beliefs on their shoulders. I think eventually we'll get into a future where someone selling you milk is not going to need to tell you about what their political position is, the things they support, they don't. They're just going to sell you milk. So I think at some point we'll get back to that. Sure, there's some brands that, if you're like a Patagonia, where your brand is built on experiencing the outdoors, and it's very much within your brand image to protect the environment. Sure, those values should be surfaced in your marketing. But I totally get what you're saying in terms of how loyalty programs are evolving to be able to be relevant to these audiences, to these younger Gen Z audiences. You mentioned something about AI, and I was curious to know your perspective more on that. I recently had Stephen Roche, who's the VP of Data Ecosystems, CDP and AI at Qualified Digital. He's actually somebody I worked with a couple years back at my first holdco agency, and he had a very interesting insight where he was saying, a lot of these brands that are adopting AI solutions aren't really adopting full AI solutions, and it's sort of just like AI-enabled capabilities. But there was a distinction where most of these brands didn't have full end-to-end solutions. So I'm curious to know, what is the role AI currently is playing within these loyalty programs, like a Salesforce, for example? What are they doing that's interesting? And if you can sort of help us navigate which activities are actually contributing to the bottom line.
Yeah. So I think to start, we have to appreciate and be super excited by the fact that we are at the complete infancy stages of AI, right? Like, I just looked at a lot of the launches that happened from space recently, and they showed technology from 100 years ago, and we were trying to get the airplane off the ground and flying. So 100 years from now, these AI capabilities are going to be so incredibly groundbreaking. And it doesn't even have to be 100 years. It can be 5 and 6 years. It's going to be so fundamentally different. So I think I absolutely agree with his assessment that these platforms are an end-to-end AI ran, because that's going to take a ton of trust and evolution of the technology to actually work. It's going to be like, hey, do my marketing for me. It can't do that yet. And I don't know if we're ever going to want it to do that for us, but it's going to be absolutely incredible. And many times it is to say, give me 10 versions of copy for the subject line, or make some imagery for me. So I just think I fully agree that we're picking the use cases where the current intelligence of AI can be enabled, and we're doing that. Where Salesforce is really betting big on is with their launch of Agent Force that they announced at Dreamforce. So what Agent Force is, you're able to train and enable agents throughout the Salesforce ecosystem. So what does that mean? So some of the use case that I saw that I got super excited about is in service. You can train an agent on frequently asked questions, on product information, on Wisma, where's my order? And that information can be answered instantly through the customer service portal or any kind of self-service channel. So that's a really beautiful way. And there's so much incredible data that we see for brands that are using AI in call centers and service centers, that they're actually getting so much more value that they anticipated in the efficiency and all that good stuff. In sales, for example, still within the Salesforce ecosystem, you can train an AI chat to train your users on how to sell something new. So how do you give a rebuttal to a question? How do you ask different and challenging questions that you're then grading? So these AI training modules are also super powerful and can be enabled now. In commerce, using an AI agent to recommend the next best product based on what other people are buying, based on the trends of categories of things that they're purchasing, and so on and so on. And marketing, copy, imagery, hey, agent, build this segment for me. So super powerful. It's only going to accelerate. But we're seeing a lot of clients implement these use cases in specific niches, and that's driving significant results for them.
It's amazing.
If that means in cost reduction, because I can do it faster, more effectively, or I'm able to create a much more personalized experience that's going to be able to drive revenue or create this wonderful experience that I couldn't have earlier.
Love it. I love hearing real world applications of AI that can move the needle, that are tangible, that have clear use cases. And those you mentioned right there, as soon as you mentioned the training, the sales agent, I remember working at a D2C business in Miami where we had a physical call center in Colombia. And one of the challenges that we had is that when there was new sales agents, conversion performance tended to dip down, and so it was a process to get them trained up. So if you're telling me that with this technology we can take the best of the best and lay out tenets and guide existing agents, or even take it one step further and you're actually talking to AI over the phone, which is actually something that we've already seen some use cases for. There was actually a company, slang.ai, which came out last year. I had talked to their CEO, and what they were doing was creating this use case, but for restaurants. So oftentimes, a lot of these local restaurants are small businesses. They're struggling because they don't have the manpower to do all of the things within the business. And sometimes even something as simple as picking up the phone means time that people are taking away from serving customers in the store. So Slang AI had this very interesting use case they were building, and I think they got acquired by somebody else. So there's already market indicators that these things solve real problems. Also, the chat bot experience side of it on the commerce side, we've already been experimenting with chat bots for many years. Large retailers like a Tiffany's or Cartier around holidays, they'll tend to do like gift guide recommendation engines around these chatbots because they sell so many different hundreds or even sometimes thousands of SKUs, these retailers, and you can land on their site and want to do business and just not even know where to start. So it's really nice to hear that there's some pointed use cases for this technology.
Yeah.
I think everybody loves hearing the aspirational stuff, but after a couple of years, everyone's like, all right, let's get down to brass tacks. What is actually going to move the bottom line? And what's also interesting is that in some of the insights from Dreamforce, I actually saw that there was a big shift in the use cases for AI. Specifically in 2022, the number one thing was businesses were looking at better security, 31% of them, or faster time to market, second place, 20%. And now in
It's
2025,
changed. Yeah.
completely changed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the tide has shifted from conceptual to, all right, let's get this going. Let's show an impact in our quarterly earnings. We've been talking about it. Now we need to connect it with something happening. That said, as you can see, I get pretty excited when I'm thinking about the future in a tangible way. So I'm curious to know, what are some things that you've been tracking recently that you are also excited to see develop in the loyalty space within the next couple of years? It could be a vendor, a new capability, anything that you see that's promising in terms of innovation.
Yeah, I would say as the technology continues to get better and we can connect systems and programs and channels together, I think the opportunity for partnerships within brands, as we saw with like hotels and Uber or airlines and other things, I think what the partnerships you're going to be able to bring in significantly easier and connect them in the system is going to make the experiences so much more fun and so much more relevant and touch different industries together, but as well as in sector, like being able to bring in brand new things that is now a benefit to you by being. I think that's so exciting as a consumer. I love those when those become relevant to me and what my family does. But I think what's really going to shift is this use of these machine learning models and AI in how we communicate and engage with consumers. So being able to craft a message based on what my brand means to me as a business owner, or a business manager, with an understanding of what's important to you as a consumer and what I know about you, and being able to send those messages and those communications and those app and web experiences. I think all of that is going to be able to shift based on what you want, and I'm going to be able to do that for you. So I'm super pumped about that. And just imagine every single communication is going to be tailored to ZARYN based on what we know about them. And then if you don't like something or you want more of something, you can tell us and we can incorporate that very easily to make sure that what we're sending you is super relevant. So I am ecstatic about that as, use of technology for good, for relevancy, for personalization, to create the moments that really matter to us.
Amazing. I feel like I've learned so much today about loyalty, where it's going, what's worked well. AT, I thank you for your time. Can you tell our viewers where they can connect with you?
Hit me up on LinkedIn. Would absolutely love to chat. Any questions, hit me up.
Amazing. AT, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Chat soon.